This is the product review from Amazon. My neighbours have been complaining that my dog have been barking. I hate the electric zap collar, so I went on Amazon and purchased a humane citronella collar. When a dog barks, it shoots a blast of citronella under the nostril, and apparently they don't like it. This morning I was getting the collar ready and I filled it with the citronella liquid, which is what we do.
Yeah.
And that's where my morning should have ended. But no, it was me, and I begin to become curious as to how the collars actually work. So I'm standing by my back door barking at my dog's collar. Nothing happens. I make sure it's turned on, check the fill level, and go through the getting started checklist one more time. Again, I bark. Nothing happens. Now, I'm not quite sure why I had this next thought, but I did. I put the bark collar on. I seriously extended the band and fit the growl box against my throat and barked. Apparently, the collar only works when it feels vibrations, because I immediately received a blast of citronella to the face.
That's horrible.
I began coughing, which only caused the collar to continue squirting bug spray over and over again into my nasal cavity. I'm now on my hands and knees in my backyard trying to breathe. And to make matters worse, the dog is now barking. I've emptied over a dozen blasts of citronella to my face. During all of this ruckus, I'm trying to undo the clasp of the collar, which has somehow managed to weld itself shut during this whole fiasco. I finally get the collar off and threw. Yes, I threw that inhumane thing across the yard and lay on the grass, sucking in the precious fresh air. In the middle of thinking this is probably the dumbest thing I've done in a while, I hear laughter. My neighbour, my complaining neighbour, saw the whole thing. He was laughing so hard that he couldn't breathe. Between the gasps, he tells me, I was going to come help you, but every time I started to walk over, you'd set it off again. And then I would start laughing, so I couldn't make it. So now, not only are my eyes red, but my face and ears are too. After checking to make sure I was okay, we parted ways and I went to the shower so I wouldn't smell like a giant tiki torch. Lesson learned. Next time, yes, there will be a next time with me. Make sure that don't fill the collar before trying to set it off. Remember, your neighbour is not a good source of help in a comedy crisis situation. And on the plus side, I won't have a mosquito problem for a few days.
These are so good.
Years ago, when I was still living at home, my younger sister used to have all her mates around before they all went out and did whatever teenage girls do. One afternoon, they all piled into the living room full of makeup and shiny new lip gloss, from which my sister proudly announced she took from my old man's bathroom cabinet as she ran out of her own.
The old boy's running a bit of lip gloss. Nothing wrong with that. A bit of papa.
Without missing a beat, Dad looks over the top of his newspaper and casually remarked, "That's the Vaseline used for my toot hole to stop me getting builder's chafe at work." Then went straight back into reading the sports pages and screams of anguish and disgust. This will forever cheer me up until the day that I die. God, I love that man.
At this point, he didn't know whether to try and extinguish the roof or his now flaming feet. This took place around the year 2000 or thereabouts. So we're all in our early 20s for our mate's stag do. We stuck the pin in the map and Prague was going to be the destination. Yeah. So we flew out to the Czech Republic for a week, and one thing we noticed straight off the bat, summer in Prague is hot. Boiling hot. Now, one of the boys was a smoker. His name was John. After a few days, while most of us found comfort in dying slowly on the bed or chair, he took his recovery position, clinging to the wall near the only window in the hotel room. It was a small single window, and this has some relevance. As we were about to leave to continue drinking, John finished his dart and tossed it out the window. As everyone was getting their shit together, I happened to look out to take in the views of the city. It was then I looked down and in a calm voice informed the boys, the roof is on fire. There was a sudden moment of silence, perhaps waiting for a punchline, but that never came, and all eyes turned to John. He put two and two together quite quickly and moved like shit off a stick. Without hesitation, he shot out the window, exiting the building quicker than when somebody told him it was his round at the bar. He dropped down the 8 foot onto the roof below, and against all odds, he survived in one piece. He stamped down on the flames in a frantic panic while we crowded around the small window, offering nothing but useless advice. Unfortunately for him, but hilariously for us, the warm temperatures, as mentioned earlier, had melted the bitumen, the black tar-like substance used for waterproofing, which was now acting like some kind of glue between the burning rubbish and John's trainers. At this point, he didn't know whether to try and extinguish the roof or his now flaming feet. I think he tried to do both, but neither, because as he jumped, he left small patches of fire behind him, kind of like if Hansel and Gretel had been arsonists. Now, this was entertaining enough, but the icing was about to be applied to the top of this flaming cake. Andy rushed to the bathroom to fill the rubbish bin with water from the tap. When he rushed from the bathroom yelling for us to move, he hadn't noticed the rather large hole in the bottom of the bin. By the time he reached the window, the bin was bone dry, and he'd been better off lobbing his knob out and pissing on the flames from afar. Thankfully, he didn't. I wonder if the phrase, "I wouldn't piss on him if he was on fire," comes from this similar incident. Without any assistance from us, John managed to put out all the fires, including his feet, and managed to climb back up the side of the hotel and in through the window. As a thank you for the thoroughly enjoyable entertainment, we all chipped in to buy him some new trainers, as his were now royally munted. I often wonder what might have happened if I hadn't looked out that window just before we left the hotel. We may well have missed the wedding while doing time in a Prague prison.
Standing O for knobhead. Standing
Well
O for knobhead.
Well done,
One of the greats.
One here from Big Nige Beaver. Boating, what's the worst that can happen? Well, I tell you, I went over a wave just as I went to sit down and landed on a lure with a treble hook, two of which ended up past the barb inside my ass cheek. Pretty well insulated, so we just ripped them out and carried on fishing.
Oh my God.
Lance, Dad told us he was a boating hero. Forgot to put the bungs in. Sunk us all to about 20 metres off the beach. My dad went to fill up the boat, jammed the petrol pump into the rod holder, put $340 worth of gas into the floor of our boat, melted the carpet, had to be replaced. Family and I were out on our old boat when it lost power on the opposite side of the lake. And we were the only ones on the lake. Took us 2 hours to row it back to the ramp with one oar and 2 skis. Dad said we had enough of this one, so he sold it, bought one. The replacement boat capsized within a year of us having it, throwing us all clear before it turtled.
Oh my gosh.
We used to make a point of going down to the boat ramp on Christmas Day just to watch all these newbies with their boats try and back down the boat ramp. It'd be a full picnic occasion. Chaired tables, sandwiches, the works. We saw one family lose every single rod on the boat as they floated backwards into the wind and ping off every single rod as it was going past the boat ramp poles. Mum's standing in the boat yelling at Dad. Dad's yelling at Mum. All kids are screaming. Pretty funny. Remember that Police 10 episode, 10-7 episode where they found that sea scooter floating around in the Wellington Harbour? Yeah, that was my hubby and his mate not learning how to tie knots properly. And that's when I need to wrap it up from Jack. Well, we got out on the water to find out that the boat battery won't start. I had to hop in the drink and swim the boat back to shore. Wasn't warm, I'll tell you that much for free. Drove up and down the road with the boat battery in the car to charge it up. Finally got out for a fish. Caught sweet far out all. Went home, hooked the boat up, and then snapped the jockey wheel clean off the trailer because some numbnut didn't put it back up.
Also, how good is it that Ian Thorpe listens to the radio show? Who can swim a boat back in?
Leave it with me. Who wants a piggyback?
Is that a guy towing a boat? We were visiting a club in a nearby town about 75 kilometres away, and they had a 4.5-foot sitting eagle carved out of solid oak. Well, I thought it would be a good idea to liberate said eagle. They said if I could pick it up and carry it to the car park, we could take it. This thing was frickin' huge. So naturally, I waited a bit, had a drink or two, then I went for it. I picked up the bird around the legs and legged it. As I exited the building, I was chased by everyone besides my mates. I could hear the beer bottles whizzing past my head, smashing against a tennis court fence. Eventually, they gave up, but not me. I continued on until I reached the car that we came up in and loaded it into the boot. We all climbed into the car and raced off back to our hometown, laughing most of the way. The next time I met Pat, our driver, he said that when he got home, he was worried that the car would be stolen and the eagle would get stolen along with it. So he thought that he would take the eagle inside. He eventually had to wake his wife up from bed to help him move it and couldn't understand how I'd stolen this thing and ran so far with it. Remember, lads, determination is the ability to stay focused on a goal. And even if that means stealing a giant eagle from your local pub, stay focused, stay hard, and stay deep.
I bought a speedboat. Seeing that I lived in a part of England that is precisely the furthest part from any coast, understandably I had to travel 170 miles to pick it up. Upon arriving, I did my best to pretend to know what I was looking at. To be fair, the hull and body looked great. I paid 800 quid, which was a bargain, and I was on my way. A little nervous about the trip back as I'd never towed a trailer before, but hey, what's the worst that could happen? Oh yeah, the trailer wheel snapping off and bouncing past me doing 100 k's on the motorway, a mere 20 miles from where I left.
Oh.
With no emergency cover, the best deal I could find was 1,200 quid to take me and the boat home. 3 weeks later, the boat was picked up and brought home. Sensibly, I decided to get the boat serviced to ensure it was working fine. Got the service done. Needed a few new parts, and there is no way that they took advantage of somebody that clearly knew nothing. So I bought some extras, rope, anchor, went on my way, another 300 quid lighter, but all okay for the greater good and the memories that I'd be creating with this great bit of kit. Day one, and I head down to the boat yard to get launched. Wife's uncle in tow, everything working seemingly. We weren't going very fast. The steering kept disconnecting, both seats snapped, and now flat like a bed. I was sure it wasn't a camper boat. Our max speed was probably somewhere between walking and staggering pace and not the wave-bouncing bullet-like pace that I had in mind. The propeller at this point was slipping. We made the most of it, anchored up for lunch. As you know, I knew nothing about boats, therefore nothing about boat knots. It turned out
Here we go.
It turned out my double granny knot was no match for the power of the ocean. While I was at the ice cream stand, my wife's uncle noticed the boat getting further and further away from shore. Oh, shit. He managed to swim out to the boat and climb aboard, and even at walking pace, he'd be able to get it back into shore. That would be if he weren't so frail and old. He didn't have the strength in his arms to start the engine. He started frantically waving at us, now back with our ice creams, watching him from the beach. I was pretty pissed off. He'd decided to go out on his own without me. And so I gave him my best wave and a thumbs up for encouragement. Eventually, we realised the problem and sent someone on a jet ski to retrieve the embarrassed uncle. With no local boatyards able to take on any work, with all the equipment and costs, the boat sent me back 1,800 quid. I sold the boat on eBay when we returned for the princely sum of 575 quid. The guy who bought it tried to knock me down to 500 after the listing ended with no bids. I agreed, stating that I'd lost so much money already. What was another 75 quid? I think he sensed my tone and paid the 575. What a poor experience, unlikely to be done again, but other than that, sweet as.
Chief here. My brother was out with a couple of mates. On the way home, one stopped for a slash in the bushes. My brother, in his infinite wisdom, decided while crossing a bridge it'd be a good prank to jump the fence and duck down behind the guardrail so he could jump up and scare his mate. He realised his mistake as he saw the bridge rapidly shooting up above him as he plummeted 12 metres onto the embankment on the side of the river. As he landed, breaking his femur in 2 places.
Femur, big part, the big bone, your thigh bone.
And now the free length of bone tore through part of his rectum and out through his perineum. It's Gooch. He literally tore himself a new arsehole. Turns out there's something actually to the age-old adage, look before you leap. When the ambos arrived, they had to cut off all of his clothes to find the source of the blood loss and evaluate his injuries. He was surrounded by 2 male police officers and the 4 ambo drivers were female. They stripped him bare, and he felt that at that point in time, while he had a bone through his gooch, it was quite important to apologise to them, stating, sorry about my small penis.
While one leg is looking like the letter Z. Sorry about the shitty.
Like I need to mention, I'm pretty sure their focus was somewhere else. Anyway, guys, Femur through the gooch. Other than that, sweet ass.
The Great Chilli Incident of 2021. My son Joey, 11 years old, has recently shown an interest in cooking and spotted a recipe called jalapeno poppers. He wanted to try jalapenos with cream cheese inside of them. And in the efforts of being a good mum and with thoughts of my future daughter-in-law in mind, I've been trying to foster this fine interest in cooking. So yesterday, I bought both the jalapenos and cream cheese in the grocery shopping. He was so excited. Side note, Joey has formed a taste for spicy food and puts chili powder on everything, and bounced around the kitchen that he wanted to have one with his breakfast. Still on a high from my mum one, I agreed on the condition that I made one quickly because we had to get ready for school and he could make the others later. Out they came from the fridge, and he had instructed that you cut them in half, take the seeds out, fill it with cream cheese, and it was at this point where I had cut the seed pouch out when Joey observed that he normally eats the full chili with the seeds in it. So he might as well eat the seeds I just cut out.
Here we go.
He chucks them into his mouth and crunches down. Only moments later, his face changes. He's jumping around the kitchen, pulling the milk bottle out of the fridge, and I'm laughing at him as I fill the main part with cream cheese. At this stage, Joey's saying how much it's burning, and as I comment that he should toughen up, I lick the cream cheese off the top of my finger. Very soon after, my mouth starts to tingle, and past tingling, it begins to burn. I grab the milk bottle from Joey and I guzzle it down, and we pass it back and forth. I rip open the bread bag and stick a huge chunk of bread in my mouth. At this stage, I'm panting, and Joey is making growly pain noises. Our noses, our eyes are watering, and Joey wipes his eye with his hand to clear the tears. And this is when the next stage begins. Mom, my eye is burning! My eye's burning! My nostrils feel like fire is literally coming out of them. And Joey and I have our heads over the kitchen sink, constantly dipping makeup pads in milk and sloshing it all over our faces. The fire in my face has turned down to a smolder now, and I look over to Joey and say, "How are you feeling?" He turns with his milk-covered face to me and looks out of his red, swollen eye and says, "Mom, I really don't think these are jalapenos." We pull it together, jump into action, and rush to get to school. Joey puts on a brave face, jumps out of the car, looking like he has a severe case of conjunctivitis. Somebody's either shat on his pillow or he's had what he thinks is a jalapeno. I kiss him at the gate and say I'll investigate. I've bagged up the evidence, ready to consult the chili gurus at work. "Hey, Eric, what are these?" His reply is, "These are habanero chilies, not jalapenos."
Oh.
Definitely not jalapenos. I reply, "So are these the spicy ones?" He goes, "Yeah, I'd give them about a 9 out of 10. Seriously, I just tortured myself and my son for breakfast. Keep up the good work, fellas. Love it back here in West Australia.